You're with Rick Munn on today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Yes, still plenty more to squeeze in before the top of the hour here. I'm very happy to be joined by for the first time, Unlocked and Loaded, at least Unlocked and Loaded here on TNT by the one and only Mario Ineco. And he is the host of the YouTube channel Maneco, Maneco 64. It's the home of alternative economics and also contrarian views. I think you're going to fit in just perfectly here on TNT. Mario, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. Listen, it's really good to see you. It's good to talk to you. When Charlotte let me know you were coming on, I got a little bit excited. I'm an ex-finance guy, worked for 10 years in the financial services industry, so I know a little bit about money and how the system works, and I'm always happy to talk to guests about that. Your YouTube channel, you've done tons and tons of uploads. I took a screenshot of them, actually, and each headline for your video would make a discussion point on its own. For example, a recent one there, currency reset will wipe out creditors and usher in CBDCs. Commercial real estate, is it manageable or is it a trigger for a 2008 crisis? Will you be able to sell your silver when it hits $100? So many topics of discussion there. Let's actually start with silver, because I think that's something that's dear to your heart, and precious metals is something we have encouraged people here, or at least I've tried to encourage them to think about investing in as an alternative. Some people get worried. They think, well, I can't carry big silver bars around with me. How do I get change for a silver bar at a supermarket if I buy a loaf of bread? You don't have to walk around with a chest of silver, do you? You can keep them in your pocket.
That's right. And that's how people in this country, up until actually 1946, our coins had 50% silver in the UK. And prior to World War I, we had sterling silver, which is 925. And then in 1920, they removed half the silver because they had to pay for the war. But it's simple, you know, the threepenny bits, the sixpence, shillings, florins, crowns, half crowns, you know, that's how you used to get changed. Most people think, yeah, how can I carry a kilo bar of silver to the shop? But no, it would be just like the coins we have today. Unfortunately, yeah, the coins have been debased, just like the Romans did 2,000 years ago. We've done it too, and we've debased it so badly that our coins don't even have any more silver. It's all copper nickel, and of course now it's even the copper nickel coins are so they're too valuable, probably, you know, and they're taking that out of circulation, and that's why. I got into silver over 20 years ago after I first bought some gold. Then I started looking into silver, and I realized that our forefathers have been using silver and gold for money for thousands of years. It's only been the last 100 years that we've been taking off sound money.
Is it really fair to say that whenever we got taken off the gold standard, that's when things really started to go south in terms of economics? Now we're running on fumes at the minute. You know, debt is busting through the roof. We've never been so indebted, either as nations or as individuals. Levels of individual personal debt is going up through the roof. We moved off that gold standard. Now, effectively, governments have a license to print money. When they need more money, they simply fire up the printing presses. That wasn't the case 200 or 300 years ago. If you didn't have the silver, the gold to back up what your currency was, you simply didn't have a currency.
That's right. And if you go back to the Napoleonic Wars, they suspended the gold standard with the Bank Restriction Act in 1797 up until 1821. But after that, they brought back the gold standard and normalized things. And they did the same after World War I. They took us off gold. And the reason they do that is that they can pay foreign countries for the materials for war. And we, the public, are stuck with the paper. And that's why you get inflation during times of war. But what happened after 1914, or the Great War, is that they didn't really put us back on the gold standard. Churchill, as chancellor, tried to do it from 1926 to 1931. But what he did is he put us back on the same rate that we were on prior to World War I. And that didn't work because they had inflated the system so much that it actually deflated the system and created a depression in the country. So yes, I would say ever since 1914, we've been on a debt-based system here in the UK. Yes, the US kept a gold, some kind of gold standard until 1971. But like you said, that takes an anchor out of the system, and they're able to create currency and credit out of thin air. The central banks will create the fake reserves to buy the debt and to keep it up. And did you know that from 1821 to 1914, when we went back on the gold standard in the UK, the average CPI per annum in that period was minus 0.1 a year. So we actually had no inflation whatsoever. And you can't argue that the UK didn't do well in the 19th century. You know, we had a great industrial revolution.
The thing is, too, you mentioned inflation as well, and of course, one of the offshoots to printing money hand over fist is it drives inflation up. And today, we got reports through that the UK is in recession. You know, it's not growing the way that it should do, and Sunak's spinning it round that inflation's going down. And of course, what the government uses to measure inflation may not be the things that you put in your own personal shopping basket, because I don't know anybody out there, Mario, that's saying, yeah, it's a lot cheaper to buy food and groceries this year than it was last year. But this is against the government telling us that the cost of increase of prices is actually going down. It doesn't seem, I don't know about you, I don't know what it's like where you live, but anytime I go now to get literally a small bag of food, you'd be lucky to get change at 20, 25 quid out of it. I almost died last night. I went to the local supermarket, Spar supermarket, got a few bits and pieces. It came to 25 quid. And then I'm sitting on here on TNT going, the government says inflation's coming down and we're turning a corner. I don't know what corner we're turning, Mario, but it ain't making me a wealthier person.
Yeah, I'll answer that question with two answers. So the first one is the definition of inflation. They've corrupted that as well, because in the old days, when you inflated the currency, like you took the silver coin and you took some of the silver out so that the money supply would increase, but the value would decrease. You see, when they changed the shilling from 9 to 5 silver in 1914 to 50% silver, it actually became a sixpence. So you were paying with the shilling, but that was only worth sixpence. So people knew that that was the case, so they charged twice the price. So inflation is nowadays is when they increase the amount of currency and credit in the system through QE, money printing, through lower rates, and the consequence of that is rising prices. And the second answer here, the way they fool people is that they call the measure of rising prices CPI now. They call that inflation. And how they fool people with that is that they always change the way they calculate that. They tinker with it to make it look lower. And I discovered back in 2022 that the Office of National Statistics was told to change the methodology for CPI going all the way back to 1949. And I'm sure the government told them to do that. And what that did, and the only reason I caught it is because I always check the Bank of England inflation calculator, which everyone can check on their website. I noticed that all of a sudden the numbers became a lot lower. And for example, Bank of England was given independence in 1997 by Tony Blair and New Labour, but they had to keep a CPI target of 2%. And prior to this change in May of 2022 to CPI, the average from 1997 CPI to 2020 was 2.7%, which doesn't seem much, but it meant that the Bank of England on average didn't hit its target of 2%. But if you go now to the Bank of England inflation calculator, and you do the same time period, the average CPI is 1.9. So yes, they're they've corrupted the definition so they can manipulate it, and they change the methodology when it starts looking too high. Right now, they tell us that CPI, or what they call inflation, is 4%, but I would say it's more like 5 or 6, and probably even more. So, like you said, I saw this lady on TikTok or Instagram, and she was just driving away from a Costa with a coffee, and she said she paid £5 for a coffee. I remember the day where you paid £1.50 or £2 for a coffee. So
yeah, and that's the thing too. You know, I try and support independent shops around the area that I'm in, try and pay cash wherever I can. But I've noticed the prices are creeping up. It used to be once every couple of years you get an extra 20 pence on the price of a cappuccino. In the last 12 months, the prices went up at least 3 times. Now, I don't use the like of Nero, not a big fan of them, but a friend of mine was in the other day and he said it was £4 for a regular cappuccino there with winter blend beans on there. I don't care what beans they're sticking in the coffee. No, nothing is worth £4 for a cup of coffee, but that's the position that we're in at the minute. I want to look at that YouTube video that you put up there that I referenced right at the start. It's titled "The Currency Reset Will Wipe Out Creditors and Usher in CBDCs." Is it safe to say this imminent crash of literal currencies and the de-dollarization, it's not prophets at doom. We're not being prophets at doom. We're not being scaremongers here. This is a case of when it happens, it's not going to be a case of if it happens, we cannot keep going the way we're going.
that's right. And that video was an interview with Clive Thompson, who was an ex private banker in Switzerland, but originally from the UK. And the other reason why it's a matter of when and not if is because under our current debt-based system, which you spoke about earlier, where there's no anchor, the debt becomes, unsustainable. And the problem with this system is that when the government issues debt, it has to pay an interest on the debt. So there's never enough currency or debt to pay the interest, so they have to keep issuing it, and it gets to a point where the economy just can't take the debt anymore. And I think that's where we're in right now. And whether we're going to get a CBDC is up for debate. I think that's what the powers that be want. But maybe a lot of people are going to ask questions. Why should we trust you with another currency if you couldn't keep this, the old currency system going?
Here's the thing, Mario, you're aware of all of this, okay? You have a YouTube channel on this, you've been studying this, you've been researching this, you've been trying to do your best to probably hedge against this in your own personal life for when this reset happens. I've been trying to do the same. I've been trying to tell people about what's coming. The writing is on the wall. For the average person out there that maybe the first time they've heard anything like this being talked about, they're thinking, are they hyping this up? They got an ulterior motive. We're just commenting on what we see coming down the line, and it's coming imminently. If you haven't prepared for this and you're just like the average Joe or Joanna on the street, and this thing hits and hits hard, how much of a shocker is it actually going to be for the average person that has no idea about any of this and hasn't done anything to prepare for it? How hard will it hit the average person?
I think it's already hitting the average person, and they're confused and they don't understand why prices are going up so much. Yes, even though Joe Biden in the US blamed food snack companies for it with shrinkflation. But how do you prepare? Well, I think you need to be aware that it's going to happen, so you're not as scared. But one thing I would say, when we do have these kind of events, currency events, the good thing about it is that they don't last very long. They can't keep going forever. Usually it's like 6 to 12 months, maybe a bit longer. And to prepare for it, I would say batten down the hatches, keep keep plugging away at your job or whatever you do. If you have your own business, try to get out of debt as much as possible, live within your means. That's the only thing I can say. And yeah, we're not trying to scare people. We're just trying to tell them. I've been doing this since late 2015 here on my YouTube channel. And the other thing as well, if you've been able to, fortunate enough to have plenty of savings in the bank, for example, with pounds, savings accounts, you might want to think of liquidating some of that for hard assets or gold and silver, for something that is real and holds value. Because if you look at other countries that have been through this, people who had a lot of savings in the bank, those savings became worthless. And that's a big thing as well for people out there, if they're fortunate enough, of course, to have some savings, because it's getting harder and harder to save.
It is. And also there's this, belief amongst British savers, for example, that there's an investors compensation scheme, that if you've up to 80 grand in the bank, if anything goes horribly wrong, that you'll be compensated and they'll look after you. I used to work for a multinational bank, and we were told, the small print says, look, that's what we're guaranteeing, but it's never happened before. There's never been a complete meltdown of all the banks before, at least over the last 100 years. So, we'll have to deal with that problem as and when it came. I wouldn't be putting too much reliance on promises from banks. And also, just as we're up this one up, Mario, it's been a great conversation. Diversification in any assets that you have as well. It would be foolish to go all in on property. It would be foolish to go all in silver. Even if you think it's the best thing in the world, you could get it wrong. So you need to have other avenues there, a little bit of cash, a little bit of, assets, hard assets, as you say, maybe some stock portfolios, some silver, some gold, some of this, some of that. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Is that a fair piece of advice, just as we close this off?
Yes, that is. And I'd add about the guarantee 80,000. Yes, they can pay as much as they can print. That's not a problem. What I mean is, they might pay you back your 80,000, but your 80,000 will be worth a lot less. That's the purchasing power will be destroyed. So yes, they might pay you back your 80,000, but you might be able to buy a Starbucks coffee with it. That's what I mean. And yeah, diversification is important. That's right. I agree with you.
I hope and believe and pray, listen, that we never see the day of an £80,000 cappuccino in Starbucks. But hey, you never know. It could happen. And if it does, remember where you heard it first here on TNT with Mario Ineco. Mario, we're up to time pretty much here. It's been an absolute blast talking to you. And as this business continues throughout the year, if it hasn't been too traumatic experience for you, it would be good to get you back periodically, just to see what your interests or your views and opinions are on the developing things in finance. So please follow Mario on the X or Twitter platform at Maneco, Maneco 1964, or please subscribe to his YouTube channel, which is Maneco 64. And in the meantime, Mario, get out there, get yourself a nice cheap cappuccino or a latte today. Don't spend 80 grand for it, and keep your powder dry. And thank you all for listening this morning to Locked and Loaded, an open line on TNT. James Freeman's incoming. I'll be back in the morning, 9 a.m. Don't miss it here, live and uncensored. TNT, today's news.